Sometimes, do you ever feel like you're living your life through the filter of a screen or in the tyranny of to-do lists? Who hasn't looked at today's date and wondered, how did we almost get to halfway through the year already? Or perhaps you've asked yourself the question, what am I doing with my life? 10 years ago, I was sitting in a high school classroom teaching a class about to graduate and asking myself a question. How do I redefine, recalibrate my life and live in a raw, adventurous, passionate way? The answer was found in the list. Each year, I would ask my graduating classes to write a list of 100 things that they wanted to do in their lives. They could be whimsical, career-orientated, or downright crazy, I'd tell them. But it had to be 100 things. So, of course, like most high school students, they'd complain, 100 things? How can I do that? So, to encourage them, I would write my own list. It's interesting to see how a list can begin with something whimsical, like, oh, my aim in life is to have champagne and a bubble bath. But, you know, as I said to them, as you move through the list of 100 things, some patterns start to emerge. You learn some things about yourself, and what is really important will start to stand out. Some of them would write that they wanted to end poverty or homelessness. Just go work overseas and work in an orphanage. It was interesting to see how the list would often transform from selfish items into others-focused dreams. And so, year after year, I would sit and write the list. But not just write a list. You see, like all good teachers, you always keep something up your sleeve. So when they'd finished their list, I would say, now I'm going to tell you the rule. They'd grown, of course. The rule is that once you cross something off, you must add something new. That way, you never feel like your life is over, and you always have 100 more things to look forward to. It's a never-ending bucket list. I wonder if I asked you today if you would write 100 things, I wonder what you would write. Would you dance the tango in Buenos Aires? Would you walk barefoot along the beach with someone you love on a Greek island? Would you swim with dolphins? Or would you have a career goal like being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? As you sit and think about that, it really is hard to come up with 100 things, isn't it? But I hope that perhaps at the end of today, you might go home and actually attempt to do so, if you haven't done so already. As I sat year after year in a classroom editing my own list, I would often think about the things that I hadn't yet done. I had slept under the stars on a remote island. I owned a golden retriever, isn't that everyone's dream? And I lived on top of a hill, but I hadn't yet written a book. I hadn't been to Paris or Rome, and I hadn't worked overseas. While I was in a classroom editing the list, there was a whole world out there waiting for me to explore. You see, there was a trunk in my study. It sat in the corner, filled with scribbles on bits of random paper with ideas for books that I would one day write. It was a trunk of dreams. And as long as those dreams were kept safe within the confines of the trunk, always kept in the realm of possibility, but never ever exposed to the risk of failure. The dreams were safe. But it was time to get those bits of paper out, put them on my desk, and turn them into something tangible and real. All those hopes, dreams, and aspirations were now going to be turned into a book. And that's how I spent the next year, writing a book, doing some postgraduate study, and adding even more things to the list. But you know what? Sometimes things happen. I don't know about you, but there are detours that come along. Sometimes twists and turns of fate that cause us to go off on a different little tangent. And a detour arrived in my email box one day in the form of an invitation to take up a position as an elementary school teacher. Now, if you know anything about me, which you don't, but if you did, you would know that small children en masse tend to freak me out. I could totally relate to Kindergarten Cop, that old 90s film, when the children would swarm around me and I'd be like, oh, when is the break going to be over? So I had to really think about this potential detour. I thought there may be a particular reason for this detour, so I said yes. At the same time, some friends of mine were setting up an organisation in Cambodia that was to educate the poorest of poor children. They asked me to go to Cambodia and write a research report for them. So an item on the list, work overseas for a season, was about to become a reality, and I only had to say yes. And so began 10 years of teaching teachers in Cambodia, a job that didn't pay but had untold rewards. So my teaching experience, my year as an elementary principal, an item on the list, all combined together in an unexpected way. Sometimes those crazy detours that we think don't make any sense, all of a sudden collide in one of those magnificent moments that cause us to say, this is what I was made to do. Since then, I've crossed many things off the list. I've swum with dolphins, I've written 4 books, I've done all sorts of things. But crossing things off the list costs. It costs finance when you walk away from a career. It costs you being uncomfortable because you go to places like Cambodia or, like we heard earlier, on medical missions all around the world. But we found that the costs of not doing those things would be much higher than actually doing them. To make the list a reality, every January 1st, my husband and I sit down with a big year calendar and we make what we call appointments for adventure. These appointments for adventure are an opportunity for us to cross things off the list, to do something we haven't done before, go somewhere we haven't been. It also makes us feel like we've got something to look forward to every month. That's how we started this journey of reinventing or redefining our lives, making appointments for adventure. You see, it's not that hard to figure out what you want your life to be about. What is really hard is deciding what you want to sacrifice or invest in to make the things on the list happen. It's the everyday choices we make that transform our lives. Just writing the list won't cut it. You see, we're all looking for that magic pill, aren't we, that keeps us slim, that will give us more money, that will give us that dream life. But magic pills don't exist. And if life were only the Facebook highlight reel we so proudly show, wouldn't life be so much simpler? Life is too uncertain, too precious to live life through a filter. So why not live with the list, the never-ending bucket list that will become your never-ending story? The list has taken me to the slums of Phnom Penh, to Antarctica, and places in my soul I never dreamed of. Imagine where the list could take you. As you redefine your life, as you change your life and live the list, perhaps you will say that to live will be an awfully big adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.